Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. Ooh, guess I should have shaved. Oh well, I think I look good anyway. Hey, TwoSun TS232. This is the one with the clip point, sort of a buoy style blade. I think they call it drop. I don't know why. They've also got one that's got more of like a sheepfoot, almost sort of a Nessmuk style blade. Not really either of those, but sort of, you get the idea. Those two knives, I got mine from White Mountain Knives, $69.99 US. Take off your 10%, that makes it what, $62.49? So, most of the knives I review are $60 and less in American dollars, so it's right in there in that range. Except they're all sold out right now. But use the link down below or just go to TwoSun and type in TS232. And on the page for these, there'll be a little orange button to click for notify and put in your email address. You'll be notified when they're back in stock, because that's like $20, $25 less than you can get it anywhere else. Amazon's got it for $85 plus about $4.50 shipping. That's Amazon.com. And AliExpress has it for $99.99. This knife is a titanium handle. It's got sort of like a jigging kind of pattern on the handle. It's a flipper, 14C28N stainless steel blade, frame lock knife. If you're interested, stick around. The full review is coming right now. Okay, here it is. By the way, you might hear some thunder in the background, and Bandit will bark if it's thundering, like a lot of dogs do, so just so that you're aware of what that sound is. So here we go. Look at that blade. Decided to use a blue background this time because, the gray on gray just kind of washed it out. You see, the only rating on the blade is right there, 14C28N. It's a little bigger than I prefer, but not bad. And, it comes up, and then you've got the clip right there. So it's biggest right there, full flat grind. And right about at this point here is where it starts coming thinner, but really it's that last half of the section where it really starts coming thin to a point. It's not particularly weak at the point, but neither is it strong behind the tip. So this is not, a bushcraft knife to start digging in wood with or anything. Not designed for anything near that kind of purpose. But with that really fine tip, it punctures into things quite easily. We've got really good sharpener's choil right there. No jimping up here. The blade is chamfered along the spine, and the chamfer starts here and it ends right about halfway down the clip section. It's a well-made knife in terms of how well it performs. It's thin behind the grind and it slices really, really well. The handle is sort of this Barlow kind of shape, something like that, and with that sort of jigging pattern in the titanium here. We've got, it's not really a pivot collar, it's more of a pivot cap. Sort of a teardrop shaped pivot cap on there. And we've got T8 screw, T8 screw, T8 screw. Good quality hardware on this knife. On this side it says TwoSun in all uppercase letters. And on this side, night morning design. We've got a little bit of a backspacer, tiny bit of, I guess you can call that jimping back here on the backspacer. Very nice indeed. And it's sort of rounded, it's raised up a little bit, so very smooth to the touch. All the edges here are nice and round. It's not chamfered, it's all rounded, so very comfortable in hand. The flipper is plenty big enough. A little bit of jimping on the front. Light switch method works very well. Just pushing down on a slight angle, very well as well. The detent on this is really good. If you hold the knife, not holding the frame lock arm at all, you shake it as hard as you want, that blade is not coming out. At least it didn't for me, and I'm actually quite good at that, making blades come out. So the detent is very good. The lock bar insert has 2 screws holding it in place, and it's got an over-travel stop. The over-travel stop hits right on the back of that plate there, the pivot collar plate. Well made. Lockup is very well done. It's fully engaged and lots of room to wear. A little bit of a chamfering right here so that you can get your thumb in there to release the lock. So it's a very well-made frame lock. For the price, this thing is quite good indeed. Pocket clip is titanium as well. 1 screw holding it in place, right side only. There's no spot for it on the left side. And we've got a little bit of a sort of like a fuller milled along the length of it, and then a little scooped out section on the end. And it works well. It climbs over immediately, and it doesn't always push to the bottom, and I'll tell you why. The cutout here, so that we've got a spring here for the frame lock, it catches on the edge of that. That's the con on this knife. Well, other than the writing, I don't like the 14C28N that big, but so it catches on there sometimes, right like that. And you have to just feed it through there. It doesn't stick out too far. Looks pretty good, if you ask me. There's some recessed sections on the back to help it lose weight. It's not a heavy knife, and it's beautiful, functional, looks good. If you don't want a piercing knife, if you're really into just slicing, then get the one with the rounded nose, and that'll be an even better slicer. But this tip here, since it's fairly wide right here, for doing delicate work, it still works okay, even though it's a fairly long blade. 3 1/3 inches roughly. And that's not very long, is it? But it's a good size blade, full size for sure. Let's go over the sizes, dimensions, and all of that stuff. This thing weighs 94 grams. That's 3.3 ounces. Not bad. The sharpness from the factory, 160 bes. It could have been a sharper, that's for sure, but that's not terrible. The cutting edge length, 84 millimeters, 3.307 inches. The blade length, tip to the handle, 88.8 millimeters, which is 3.496. So 3.5 actually. I said 3 1/3. It's a 3.5 inch blade. The thickness of the blade up here at the ricasso, the flat section, 3.65 millimeters, 0.1435. Well over 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth, its biggest right here, 21.2 millimeters, 0.835 inches. The thickness of the edge behind the grind, about 1/3 of the way up is where I usually measure it, 1/3 of the way from the heel, 0.4 millimeters, 16 thousandths. That's why it slices as well as it does. I don't want to go 14C28N, I wouldn't want to go thinner for an EDC kind of knife than what it is. Maybe 15 thou, but 16 thou is plenty thin enough. The grind angle. This knife was sharpened very well. 19 degrees on this side, 19.2 degrees on this side. On this side, there's a tiny bit of variability along the length, but less than half a degree. And on this side, it was maybe 0.2, 0.25, a quarter of a degree change along the length. So whoever is at TwoSun sharpening their knives, at least one of their sharpeners knows what they're doing. The handle length is 110 millimeters, 4.33 inches. The grip area is about 9.5 centimeters, about 3 3/4 inches. The handle thickness, not counting the pocket clip, 12.5 millimeters, 0.492, so half an inch thick. The knife depth, when it's open and when it's closed, is greatest right here at the end of the handle, 25.7 millimeters, 1.012 inches. And the total length of this knife when the blade's deployed, 194 millimeters, 7.638 inches. I quite like that. It's a good knife, good dimensions. The balance point is a little bit into the handle. I'd prefer it to be a little bit higher up, but with how thin this blade is, it has to take some of the weight from the pivot and stuff to get it to balance here. And I'd much rather have the handle in the weight in the handle than have the weight up in the blade. So very, very good. I've already told you the price, but I'll just reiterate on the screen. $69.99 minus 10% equals $62.99. That's about $76 Canadian for this knife. If you're not in North America and you really want this knife, then AliExpress is your place to get this. And I've got links for AliExpress as well, and Amazon.com. If you're an American and you can't wait for White Mountain knives, then use the Amazon link and pay. It's just under $90 after you have got the shipping included. It ships from China, so it still will take a little bit of time to get to you. And before we get into the final pros and cons, let's show you what it looks like taken apart. Okay, the first thing to show you, no, you don't need to take off that screw for this plate to take it apart. It's got a captured stop pin. It's right there on the blade. Ceramic ball bearings. And it's got a race, which is really good. So this is a hardened piece of steel. It's like a washer. It goes in on the liners so that the ball bearings run against the race and the blade, which are both hardened steel, to make it perform really well. If they didn't put these in, it would dig a deep trench in, the ball bearings would dig a deep trench into the handle very quickly. So real steel always does everything right. Not everything, but you know what I mean. Their design is quite good. There's the back spacer, quite good. The screws, very well made, nice, thick, heavy screws. And right here on the blade, there's a detent ramp that helps for when you close it, so it doesn't have a hard stop halfway through, and then you have to overcome that to close the knife. It's well made. The pins and the screws are not D-shaped. They are free spinning, but I had zero issues taking this knife apart. I did have the typical problem with TwoSun knives of having the pivot screw come loose during use. I just had to snug it down plenty and it held for longer. But I would use VC3 thread mate on here all day long. Even if you use Loctite on this, I had somebody comment the other day saying they don't want to put Loctite on these knives, because then they can't take it apart. No, Loctite, if you use the right kind, will not hold it forever. If you're really concerned about it, get the Loctite Purple, which is made for thin little tiny screws like this. It's their weaker version. It holds it, but it's not hard at all to overcome to take apart. So if you think that Loctite is just too strong for you, get the purple stuff. I've mentioned it in videos years ago, so I haven't mentioned it recently. It's not hard to find it. It's really good stuff, but I use VC3 Vibratite by ND Industries, and that also comes off without too much trouble. You got a good screwdriver and a decent screw, and you can take it apart. And the best thing about that stuff is you use it once, and you can put the screw in and out 5, 6, 7 times even, and not have to clean it all off and reapply. So really good for guys who do maintenance on their knives. VC3 Thread Mate by Vibratite, made by ND Industries. Really, really good stuff. I've got videos on that. I'll put a link to the very end of this video for that stuff if you haven't heard of it before. Especially easy to get if you live in USA. Okay, so now I'll put it back together and we'll talk about the pros and the cons and the final thoughts. I didn't show everything. I forgot to do the alignment. And yes, lock up. No blade plays side to side, up and down, and still has very good movement. And I already talked about the flipper. And I didn't show you the pocket clip taken off. If you wanted to see how that was made. There you go. Just a nice little recessed spot right there for it to sit in, and the one screw to hold it still. I really like these T-handled screwdrivers. I like a lot of different screwdrivers. thanks to whoever used my coupon code for KC Tool, not coupon code, my referral links. I earned a decent little commission off of whoever purchased. Somebody purchased over $400 worth of tools, and I got about 10% of that. So that really does help me out. So that's like over half a knife, or maybe a couple of really budget knives. So thank you so much. This knife, pros, cons, well designed, well executed. Just the perennial issue of, the screws come a little bit loose during use, and, the big 14C28N on there. At least it's not super dark. There's no lanyard hole for those of you who really like to use lanyards. I should point that out. Other than that, it's a good knife, comfortable, works well. It's good for big hands. There's room here yet, and, my hand grips over that. And I've got fairly big hands. It's just well designed, well made, looks great. The pivot collar is a nice touch. I like how they put the name on it. They've got a few other knives from TwoSun and Night Morning Design that have this teardrop pivot collar thing. Good and strong. There's some T6 screws there for the lock bar insert. It's just all well made. I did talk about this before. I forgot. Yeah, the pocket clip. This relief cut for the lock arm does catch on the pants a little bit sometimes. So if you're in the market for one of these, I think the price point is pretty good for this, especially at White Mountain Knives. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. I couldn't do this without you. If you want to become a member, a supporter of the channel, you've got your choice between becoming a YouTube member. Click on join below any of my videos, or go to patreon.com/CCE and join that way as well. There are some good benefits to being a Patreon supporter. Till next time, remember friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.